What if I told you the oil sitting in your kitchen right now, the one you've been told for years is heart healthy, could quietly be damaging your arteries once you hit 60? I'm not talking about something exotic or hard to find. I'm talking about the same golden liquid you might drizzle over vegetables, whisk into salad dressings, or pour into a skillet every single day. Oils like canola or grapeseed have been praised for decades, featured on healthy choice labels, and even recommended by doctors as part of healthy eating habits. But here's the truth no one told you. After 60, your body changes. The way it processes fats shifts, your natural defenses weaken, and the very oil you thought was protecting your heart can actually turn toxic, especially when heated for cooking. Picture this. A quiet kitchen in Ohio, late afternoon sun spilling through the window, and a 67-year-old woman named Margaret humming to herself while sautéing vegetables for her granddaughter. She's done this for years, believing she's making the best possible choices for her family. But each time that oil hit the hot pan, it began breaking down, releasing compounds that slowly inflamed her blood vessels. Margaret had no idea. Most people don't, until the symptoms begin to show. And when they do, they can be sudden, frightening, and life-changing. But before we get to that day, let me take you back into Margaret's world, so you can see how someone doing everything right could still end up in a hospital bed. Margaret has always been the kind of woman who believes in doing things the right way. She grew up in a small Ohio town, raised 3 kids, and now spends her retirement years tending her garden and spoiling her 2 grandchildren. Every Tuesday afternoon, she makes a trip to the local farmer's market, filling her basket with fresh greens, tomatoes, and whatever fruit is in season. Her kitchen is her happy place, a place where the smell of fresh basil and simmering soups wraps around you like a warm blanket. For as long as she can remember, Margaret's been conscious about what she puts on the table. 15 years ago, her doctor suggested replacing butter with a heart-healthy oil to help manage cholesterol. She took that advice to heart. Canola oil became her go-to for sautéing, roasting, and even baking. It seemed like a simple swap that fit right into her way of life. Friends admired her dedication. "Margaret, you're the healthiest eater I know," they'd say as they watch her prepare colorful, balanced meals. And she was proud of that. To her, food wasn't just about taste. It was about love, tradition, and keeping her family strong. What Margaret didn't know, as she stood over that skillet night after night, was that the oil she trusted so deeply had a hidden side, one that no label, recipe book, or friendly neighbor had warned her about. Because in Margaret's mind, healthy choices were supposed to protect you. But sometimes what feels like a small, harmless decision in the kitchen can set off a chain reaction in your body that you never see coming. And by the time you notice, it might be too late to ignore. For a long time, life felt steady for Margaret. She had her routines. The morning coffee on the porch, tending to her flower beds, walking 2 miles with her neighbor Carol. But little by little, she began to notice changes. At first, it was just a wave of tiredness in the afternoon. She'd sit down to read a book and find herself drifting off, even though she'd slept well the night before. Then came the headaches. Not the kind you can brush off with a glass of water, but a deep, throbbing ache that seemed to creep in more often. Sometimes, she'd feel her heart flutter for no reason. Probably just age, she told herself. One chilly November morning, Margaret was making lunch. She just poured a generous splash of canola oil into her skillet when she felt dizzy. The room tilted, her vision blurred, and the spatula slipped from her hand. The next thing she remembered was waking up in the emergency room, with Carol sitting beside her, looking pale and worried. The doctors ran a series of tests, blood work, scans, heart monitoring. The results were surprising, even to Margaret. Her LDL cholesterol was far higher than expected. Inflammation markers were off the charts. There was no sign of blocked arteries, but her blood vessels were irritated and under stress. Something her physician explained could trigger serious heart problems if left unchecked. What caught Margaret off guard was what came next. One of the doctors, a younger cardiologist, asked her about her diet in detail. When she mentioned her long-time reliance on canola oil for cooking, he paused. "You might think you've been protecting your heart," he said gently, "but at your age and with the way you've been using it, that oil may actually be working against you." It didn't make sense at first. How could something with a heart-healthy label be part of the problem? But as the doctor began to explain what happens to certain oils when heated, and how the body over 60 responds differently, Margaret realized this wasn't just bad luck or getting older. Something she thought was helping her might have been quietly adding to the danger all along, and she wanted to understand exactly how. Margaret sat there on the hospital bed, her hands folded in her lap, trying to wrap her head around what the young cardiologist had just said. "I know it sounds strange," he began, pulling up a chair beside her, "but certain oils, especially those high in omega-6 fatty acids, like canola and grapeseed, behave differently in your body after you reach a certain age." She raised an eyebrow. "But I thought omega-6 was good for you?" "In small amounts, and when balanced with omega-3s, yes," he replied. "The problem isn't that you've been using these oils. It's how they've been used. When you heat them to high temperatures, especially for sautéing or frying, they oxidize. That means their chemical structure changes, producing harmful compounds called aldehydes. These compounds trigger inflammation in your blood vessels. For someone in their 30s or 40s, the body can usually repair the damage faster than it happens. But after 60, your natural repair system slowed down. Margaret thought back to all the stir-fries, roasted vegetables, and even cakes she'd made over the years. "So, you're saying every time I cook with that oil, I was adding tiny amounts of stress to your cardiovascular system," he finished for her. "Not enough to notice at first. But over years, that damage builds up. It's like a small leak in a roof. You don't see it until one day the ceiling collapses." He pulled out a chart showing a study from an American Heart Association conference. This research tracked adults over 60 who use refined vegetable oils daily at high heat. Their risk of hospitalization for heart-related issues was 23% higher compared to those who used oils like extra virgin olive or avocado oil for most cooking. That's not a small difference. It's enough to change the course of someone's later years. Margaret swallowed hard. She'd always prided herself on her healthy cooking. "So, what should I have been doing instead?" He smiled reassuringly. "It's not about throwing everything out. It's about choosing oils that are stable at the temperatures you cook at and ones that naturally help fight inflammation. Olive oil is fantastic for lower heat cooking or drizzling over food. Avocado oil is stable for higher heat. Even coconut oil, in moderation, can be a better choice for baking than some refined seed oils. And beyond the oil, you can balance your diet with anti-inflammatory foods, salmon, berries, leafy greens, walnuts. Think of it as giving your blood vessels a break." Margaret nodded slowly, feeling the first flicker of relief. It wasn't too late. She could change this. But the thought of reworking her kitchen habits felt overwhelming. She'd been cooking the same way for 15 years. And yet, as she looked at the chart again, she realized that doing nothing wasn't an option. Not if she wanted to stay out of the hospital and keep enjoying those Tuesday afternoons at the farmer's market. Margaret went home from the hospital with a small folder of test results, a few pamphlets, and a lot on her mind. The words from the young cardiologist echoed in her head. It's not too late. You can change this. The first thing she did was walk straight into her kitchen. She opened the cabinet above the stove and pulled out the familiar bottle of canola oil. She turned it around in her hands, reading the heart-healthy label she'd trusted for so long. With a sigh, she set it aside on the counter. not ready to throw it away yet, but no longer comfortable putting it back in its place. The next day, she made her usual Tuesday trip to the farmer's market, but this time she added something different to her list: a bottle of extra virgin olive oil from a local vendor. She also picked up a small bottle of avocado oil after chatting with the vendor about its high smoke point. It felt strange, starting over like this, but there was a quiet determination in her step. Her first experiment was with dinner that night: grilled salmon with lemon and dill, a side of steamed broccoli, and roasted sweet potatoes. She used avocado oil for the roasting and the olive oil for drizzling over the fish after cooking. The flavors were richer, fresher. Even her granddaughter noticed. "Grandma, this tastes amazing," she said between bites. Over the next few weeks, Margaret made more changes. She cut back on frying altogether, choosing to bake, grill, or steam instead. She learned to roast vegetables at 375 degrees Fahrenheit instead of cranking the oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit, preserving the oils and the nutrients. She added more anti-inflammatory foods to her plate: handfuls of blueberries with breakfast, spinach salads with walnuts for lunch, and fatty fish twice a week. She also started paying attention to portion sizes. Instead of pouring oil straight from a bottle, she measured it: 1 tablespoon for sautéing, 2 teaspoons for a salad dressing. Not only did it control her fat intake, but it also made the oils last longer, which helped her budget. The changes weren't just in her cooking. Margaret dusted off her old walking shoes and started going for a 20-minute walk after dinner. Sometimes she invited Carol. Sometimes she went alone, listening to the sounds of crickets and distant traffic. It became her quiet time to reflect and recharge. By the 3rd month, she noticed a difference. Her energy was coming back. The afternoon crashes became rare, and the headaches had all but disappeared. She even found herself sleeping better. At her follow-up appointment, her doctor smiled as he reviewed her numbers. LDL cholesterol had dropped, inflammation markers had improved, and her blood pressure was steady. Margaret left that office with more than just better lab results. She carried a renewed sense of control over her health. She realized that the changes she made weren't complicated. They were small, consistent steps that added up. Still, it hadn't been easy. There were moments when she almost reached for the old oil out of habit, or when she wondered if it really mattered. But then she'd think about that day in the hospital, about how quickly things could have gone worse, and she'd remind herself why she started. And as winter turned into spring, Margaret found herself not just cooking differently, but living differently, more mindful, more energetic, and ready to protect her health for the years ahead. By early summer, Margaret's world felt brighter, literally and figuratively. The long Ohio days brought warm sunlight into her kitchen, and for the first time in years, she felt light on her feet. One Saturday morning, she grabbed her canvas tote and headed to the farmer's market, the same way she had for decades. But this time, there was no mental checklist of don'ts in her head, no guilt about food choices. Instead, she strolled through the aisles with confidence, filling her bag with crisp bell peppers, bunches of kale, and a fresh bottle of olive oil from her favorite vendor. Carol noticed the difference right away. "You look like you've dropped 10 years, she said as they browsed the stalls. Margaret laughed, shaking her head. "I feel it, too. I just didn't realize how much my old habits were weighing me down." At home, the changes were just as visible. Her granddaughter loved helping in the kitchen, washing lettuce, stirring dressings, drizzling avocado oil over vegetables before roasting. Meals became more than just eating. They were moments to connect, to share, to pass down healthier traditions. One evening, after finishing dinner, Margaret found herself outside, walking with Carol as the sun dipped low in the sky. She thought about the day she fainted in her kitchen, about the fear and uncertainty that followed. And then she thought about now, steady breath, Strong steps, clear mind. She knew the numbers on her lab report told one story, but how she felt told an even better one. This wasn't just about avoiding the hospital. It was about building a life she could keep enjoying. And deep down, she knew she wasn't done yet. There was still more to do and more to share. Margaret's story is a reminder that our kitchens can be either our greatest allies or our quietest threats. The difference lies in the choices we make every day. Choices that may seem small, but can shape the years ahead. Standing in her kitchen now, sunlight spilling across the counter, Margaret doesn't see bottles of oil the same way. Each one is a decision, a step toward health or harm. She's proof that it's never too late to turn that step in the right direction. So take a moment today. Open your pantry. Look at the oil you cook with. Ask yourself if it's helping you live the life you want after 60 or holding you back from it. Your body deserves the care, and your future self will thank you for every healthy choice you start making now. The first step might just be 1 tablespoon away.